we need to start at the beginning of understanding subscription models. So think about back to 2011, and even in the 90s, digital publishers were starting to launch a premium model online where they blocked content with a paywall. And if we take the example of the New York Times, who launched their paywall in 2011, they had a one-size-fits-all model, so every reader had exactly the same experience, and readers were offered access to 20 articles per month, which seems incredible today. And the challenge to overcome, the question at this moment was that with falling ad and print revenue, how can we monetize our online content? And that's still obviously a huge question today, but this was the key one at the time. Fast forward to the 2010s, 2020s, and increasingly more are jumping on digital subscriptions. But we're seeing a division in the trends of this model. So North Americans are favoring a more metered model. So metering is where you have access to a quota of articles per month before you're blocked. Whilst Europe are mainly choosing a freemium model. So this is where articles are divided into free versus premium. Premium being those blocked by the paywall. And the challenge is the same as before, but we're also asking which content should be free versus premium. And this poses an important question when it comes to your paywall model and these two examples here. Because actually, if we think about a metered model means that you can be blocked by the paywall on any article, i.e. every single article should be worth paying for. Whilst in Europe or with freemium models, if content is divided into two, we've got some which have a little premium tag, and those are more subscription focused. Those are about blocking your readers and asking them to pay for access to this unique value content, whilst your free articles are more about getting ad revenue and ad focused models. So thinking about this so far, we want to ask you a question to open the floor to you before we dive into the theory, is how do you currently decide if an article is free or premium? And we should have a little Q&A tab on the side, on the right there. And I think someone is going to be asking a question. So please share how you currently decide if an article is free or premium. So A is about content value. So you've got freemium model where shorter generalist content is free, whilst premium articles are the more in-depth, more unique value are blocked by paywall. B, you have metering. C, it's the user, based on the user's level of engagement, for instance, how you decide whether an article is free or premium, or a dynamic approach. So just whilst everyone's filling in this, let me share, so you can, I think you should be able to move the little poll tab, so then it's not blocking the screen. Sharing some results from a recent survey that we ran, we asked the same question. And the overwhelming majority based this decision on reach and conversion potential of the articles. And from the looks of the polls, that's looking like it's the same amongst you all. So short articles are free. These are normally breaking news and service news, whilst in-depth features are premium. So this is more your columnists, your analytics, and your opinion articles. This decision is often manual and made pre-publication. So the journalist knows whether they're writing a free or premium article, but performance is tracked post-publication, and maybe a paywall is added afterwards to a free article if it has particularly high traffic. What does success of a premium article look like? So results from our survey found that these are the key performance metrics that are tracked in order to understand how a premium article is performing. So this could be about last click conversion and assist, and in particular about engagement and the not only subscriber engagement on this, but how long non-subscribers are spending on that page and how many of those are visiting this article. And a final question from the survey was about whether this changes, whether paywalls can be added for other reasons. And one publisher noted that they hardwalled all paywalls after for 1 week and then unlocked them after 7 days. And in a recent podcast, the team at Build in Germany gave the example of an article talking about news of a player transferring teams. So the breaking news at that immediate point of it being breaking is premium, because the premium subscribers have the opportunity to have unique first access to this content, to this news. But then at some point, this article, this news is shared with everyone, is more common knowledge, and so they unlock it. And then the goal is to follow up relatively quickly with other information to share with Plus readers. But all of this and all of these little diversions to the classic free versus premium division makes us wonder whether we're asking the right question. Because these are the typical questions on the left that many publishers come to us asking about. What percentage of articles should be blocked? How many articles should you offer before the paywall? Which paywall model should I be using? Which content should be free versus premium? But actually, these questions all depend on two big factors that actually means that we should be changing this question that we're focusing on, and instead be focusing on how can I maximize the value of each individual reader and each individual article. And that's what we're going to help you do today. So I'll pass it over to Jen.
Yeah, sure. So knowing your content and your audience is key to achieving your business objectives. So let's break this down a little bit further. One thing remains true over time. Content is key and foundational to a solid monetization strategy. So if you just want to flip the slide there, yeah, thanks. So content can play multiple roles in your strategy, and identifying what these roles are and how they align with both your current and future goals is critical. A good starting point is to agree on what these roles are, how and what key metrics define success for them, and then map out the current and future strategy. Although this seems simple in theory, defining success metrics is often challenging. The phrase data rich, information poor is all too real. So here's a couple of different ways to consider approaching it, or questions to ask yourself. So what content is driving acquisition? Look beyond content that is simply driving the most conversions, because that could just simply be a byproduct of your current strategy, and look at what is driving conversions efficiently. You can look at something as simple as conversion rates or conversion per article published to really understand your return on staff effort. Another way to look at it is looking at path to conversion. What content is driving users further down the funnel? What content are they engaging with and spending time with before they make that acquisition decision? And understanding how these metrics shift over time. Further to what Madeleine mentioned, article life cycle is really important. What do these metrics look like on the day of publication, 7 days following publication, or once they reach a certain archive status? Typically, we hear publishers saying that our content reaches an archive status or a certain level of maturity once it hits 21 to 28 days. Also, understanding how these metrics shift with news cycle and seasonality is pretty critical. Beyond conversions, what content are your loyal audience engaging with? These are your registered users and your subscribers. And are you producing enough of this to maintain retention? Ultimately, aligning your content metrics with your business strategy isn't about creating more content. It's about creating content that strategically drives growth and loyalty. Just want to flip over to the next slide. So here is a high-level example. So we often work with newsrooms to assess content performance by categorizing contents into 4 strategic quadrants. This simple framework can help you guide your content development, resource allocation, content promotion, and ultimately your paywall strategy. So here are your 4 quadrants. You have your mass appeal quadrant. This is content that drives reach and ad revenue, which is extremely appealing for B2B teams as it fuels top of funnel. You have your premium content quadrant. So this is content that's supporting acquisition and retention. It's a key focus for your B2C teams as it's geared towards loyal subscribers. You have your mission journalism quadrant. So this is your high value mission driven content that fulfills journalistic goals and builds brand integrity, which is really important to your editorial teams and ultimately your overall brand. And then you have the dreaded underperformers. So this content isn't really contributing to your key business goals. It's recognizing these underperforming quadrants and what content falls in there really allows you to reallocate resources to higher impact areas. And why does this alignment matter? Well, aligning your content strategy with your paywall strategy is essential, and especially when resources are limited. We're all expected to do more with less these days. And optimizing resources and content production around clear monetization strategies will be critical to the success. So the question we all need to ask is, does your content production align with your business objectives? If you're a subscriber first business, is 10% premium content sufficient to achieve these outcomes? Or if mission journalism is 30% of your production, is that sustainable? Ultimately, by making data-driven decisions, you can maximize impact, drive revenue, and fulfill your brand's journalistic mission. Maybe I'll pass it over to you now, Madeleine, to dive into the audience side of the equation.
Yeah, thank you. So ultimately, different content, different articles have different value to business, to your business model. And this is actually the same when it comes to audiences. So I'm going to show this graph, which looks a bit complicated when you first look at it, but it's basically measuring the media time of your audience. So media time is based on the number of seconds active on your website. And what we can see is that there's less engaged readers over this side, and then higher engaged readers and your champions who are in this top corner. But what is the scary thing about it is when we look at how our audience places on this table, then 95% of users are found in the under 120-second media time mark who aren't active that frequently or very active on the site at all, even when they are on the site. So if 95% of users fall into this unengaged segment, why are we treating them all the same as in the same way as this 5% of users? What instead should be the strategy is that this 95% of users, the goal should be to introduce them to your value proposition, to what you have on offer. Whilst the 5% of users, they already understand who you are, they already understand your value proposition. And instead, the focus can be on the benefits of subscription and the advantages in moving to that next step and paying. So ultimately, what we're trying to prove is that two readers aren't the same, aren't alike, and different content should have more extensive goals rather than simply short form content and long form content. And that a dynamic model whereby you adapt the paywall strategy, the subscription journey to each reader based on their profile or context, so which article they're on, is the most effective strategy for optimizing reader revenue. So very neatly followed on to this next slide, the juicy bit. How do you put this into practice? So we've explained why you should be using a dynamic model. And now, how do you get started with being dynamic? First things first, so being dynamic means putting your audience first. So it means adapting to each reader or context. So if we think about a freemium strategy as the base, you've got a free versus premium division at the moment. And free articles are usually in the ad-focused. They're more about that in the matrix that Jen shared. They're more in that ad-focused content space, which the goal is about page views. And these are often update me style articles if we start thinking about user needs. And then what we can be doing is adding on a level of dynamicity based on each reader. So for free articles, they can mainly be open depending on the level of engagement. Whilst our premium articles, which are subscription focused and we're tracking subscription metrics, these are often inspire me, more give me a perspective, user needs, and these are mainly closed depending on the reader's level of engagement. So if we go deeper into this, free articles, this is just an example, by the way, so it depends on your individual strategy. If we think about free articles being mainly open, for less engaged readers, the goal is to allow them to discover our content, discover what we have on offer. So that could be by leaving these articles completely open.
by having a closable banner. So even the fact that they have to click on that X on the corner of the banner is some kind of value they're giving you by recognizing that they've read the banner and then closing it. Or what we call a newsletter wall. So when you block an article and you ask a reader to sign up to your newsletter in exchange for access to the content. Whilst more engaged readers could be led through a slightly harder journey. So registration wall, a metered paywall where they get access to a certain number of free articles, or a closable paywall. Then if you move to the premium articles, your more engaged readers should be blocked here. They should maybe be presented with a hard paywall that really puts the value of subscription at the forefront. Whilst your less engaged readers, even though this is technically a premium article, maybe they could be left to consume some of this content and discover the unique value that you have on offer. So through a registration wall, in order to collect first-party data and increase engagement, a metered paywall or a closable paywall, for instance. And then you can add other layers of dynamicity on top of that when it comes to the user journey, but also the paywall itself. So the messaging, the design, and the value proposition that you're putting forward. And this can be based on different factors, because ultimately readers differ in other ways aside from level of engagement. So we can base this on content tags. So for instance, your sports content versus your politics, based on the author, based on the device. So we know that those on desktop have a higher conversion rate than those on mobile, based on location, source of traffic. Those coming from a newsletter are highly more likely to convert than those coming from social media, or user status. So ex-subscribers have a significantly higher propensity than anonymous readers, and members registered free users are something like that. So just giving you an example of adding more layers to dynamicity. So Elle magazine in France, they've been adapting their paywall based on the content tag. So whilst they have other layers of dynamicity, this is a real key one, is on that last click on the paywall. And the idea is that they understand this interest that a reader has. So on the left, we have a paywall for readers on cooking content, whilst on the right, we have a paywall for users on content talking about beauty products. So the idea is that the value proposition and the first two benefits of subscription are adapted to that individual's unique or that individual's interests, whether that be cooking or beauty. And this means that especially for your most engaged readers who are really looking to be proven why, looking for that proof of why they should be converting, this is a really unique and effective strategy to get started on being dynamic. And a few other examples here. So you've probably heard the recent news about the Washington Post adding some dynamic payments. So we've got a $4 1 week one-time payment here, or a $7. And this is based on a variety of factors, including location and device type. This is a paywall for a French publisher who presents this paywall to ex-subscribers. So join us again to be able to benefit from everything that the JDE has on offer. And this is a supporter banner, so similar to the Guardian model from the Kiev Independent in Ukraine, who used this during beginning of July in the US, and targeted that specific reader segment. And this kind of targeting, this really talking to that individual user, is incredibly valuable for moving readers through the funnel and adapting this, forgetting the question of free versus premium, but more thinking about who is this specific reader group, what do they value, and how can we convince them to bring us even more value.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about supercharging your strategy by adding AI to the mix. And the reality is AI is revolutionizing content monetization by bringing real-time decision-making to optimizing every page view. You can flip over to the next slide, thanks. So every page view ultimately counts, and AI helps maximize revenue across subscription, registration, and advertising revenue. Most AI models are built to understand the trade-off between the various revenue streams, and many will take actual revenue inputs into consideration when helping make these decisions. So AI works to quickly guide each user to its highest valuable state, whatever that state may be, whether it's asking for a credit card or a subscription to gain a subscription, whether it's asking for first-party data that could be as a full-blown registration or maybe just a newsletter sign-up, as Madeleine mentioned, or letting them engage with the content to gain more advertising revenue. You can flip over to the next one. By adding a AI intelligent layer, we'll really bring data science, recommendation engines, and benchmarking to execute on the optimal tactics at the right time. By adding AI to your paywall strategy, you ensure it's evolving in real time based on what's happening today. Essentially, there's two types of models that are really popular out there that are AI driven. You have your content propensity models and your user-based models. So if I'm talking about a content propensity model, it's about making paywall decisions immediately at the time of publication or when an article is updated. This is ultimately a strategy to optimize and automate your premium content strategy. Should content be free or should you make it premium? It will help you answer the questions like, what is the likelihood of this article to drive a subscription? And how many page views can I expect from this article? Essentially, what these models do is they use natural language processing models to analyze content embeddings and historical data such as conversions, wall hits, and traffic to predict performance based on similar past content. So it's really removing the guessing work or generalized assumptions from the equation. So a real-time, and essentially you can add a real-time analytical model on top of this premium content strategy that will dynamically adjust these wall decisions and outcomes to make sure that your predictions are aligning with what you expected to happen. The other type of model that I mentioned is your user propensity model. So the user-based models predict the likelihood of each visitor, likelihood to subscribe or register. So these models consider user features and behaviors, crafting personalized journeys and wall decisions based on each visitor's conversion potential. You just want to flip over to the next one. Essentially, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into the user-based model simply because user-based AI models are a little bit more common and more accessible. So when you think about an AI-driven user model, it essentially is analyzing a rich set of features. So it looks at things like device type, browser, referral source, user type, geolocation, and time of day. These insights help predict engagement patterns and conversion potential for those anonymous flyby visitors. As Madeleine mentioned, that's a huge chunk of your audience. So understanding who they are, but still being able to make informed predictions on whether they could potentially have conversion potential or not on their first page view is really important, because this is an opportunity for you to engage and drive them potentially further down the funnel. If the user happens to return, these models are able to build a more comprehensive user profile. So by analyzing user behavior such as recent visits and historical activity, frequency of paywall hits, diversity of the content they're browsing, AI builds a more dynamic, evolving profile. So as the evolving user profile helps predict valuable outcomes like likelihood to subscribe or register based on their unique engagement patterns. User journeys don't necessarily need to be linear, as I have visualized here. AI can help make those decisions and drive your end user to the highest value state, which is essentially a subscription much quicker. So for example, an anonymous user may have a high subscription potential, and you can bypass that registration step and go directly to subscribing. You want to jump over to the next slide, Madeleine? AI is not only enables smarter wall decisions, but it also gives you control and flexibility in your strategy. So AI solutions can allow for controllable, predictable intercept rates, making experimentation and optimization to achieve that optimal rate quite efficient. Its predictability also helps in making efficient budgeting and forecasting decisions, which we all know can be a bit of a challenge. You also can choose which models you want to deploy. You can layer in custom business rules and editorial guardrails for additional control. And some AI solutions may require very custom trained models with very deep integrations, but there's also browser-based options out there that are a very seamless way to implement paywall and reg-wall strategies. So whether you're using a custom or industry standard model, AI wall decisions leverage detailed user profiles based on your data and can be highly effective. At the end of the day, AI can be as sophisticated as you need it to be, but maintains accessible, adaptable, and can be fully integrated to achieve your business goals and meeting your editorial standards. You just want to flip to the next one. We couldn't let this webinar go by without calling out that Poool and Sophie do have an integration. So Poool and Sophie have a seamless integration to help maximize your paywall strategy. So Sophie's AI-powered paywall decision engine creates a 360-degree profile of your audience and content. And so as readers engage with your content, Sophie's decision engine will adapt wall decisions in real time to meet your business objectives. These AI decisions are then passed over to Poool, which can execute on them effectively, ensuring your paywall strategy is both sophisticated and fully actionable. And maybe I'll pass it over to you, Madeleine, to dive a little bit deeper into how do you do that.
Yeah, of course. So operationally, I'm always quite like visual learner when it comes to these kind of things, and like to understand like how operationally what that actually looks like. And I think we can think back to that diagram that I shared before about how you can split, you've got your freemium model and then you split your readers based on their level of engagement as well. So this is what you can do with the two solutions combined, is that in the Poool dashboard you can then create a context based on Sophie's propensity score, so high propensity users that then can be sent a certain journey that we were discussing before. So for instance, for our high propensity users, say we're on a premium article right now, what we would maybe consider as a premium article in your strategy that you have at the moment is that then for high propensity users, you can send them a paywall and just have the subscription as the single step. Whilst for your low propensity users, then you can build what we call a soft conversion strategy, where you lead them through maybe newsletter, sign up, or registration that gives them access to one free article and then the paywall afterwards. Because ultimately, all of this is saying that the way I like to describe it is that think of subscription as like the first floor on a flight of stairs, and that readers are arriving, they've never visited your site before, and they are on the ground floor, and you're expecting them with a paywall to just jump up to the first floor, and actually they need to go up those steps. So what you're doing here is creating these steps to move their level of engagement up and increase their propensity to subscribe, so then in the future, when you do present that paywall, that balance between frustration and engagement is just at the right point in order to convert them. And that's what the mix of dynamicity as well as integrating AI models, which don't need to be complicated, like Jen said, to optimize conversion performance.